Chapter 7. Vrindavan was full of miracles for me, both great and small. One morning, while walking along a forest trail, I found myself face to face with a charging bull. A cloud of dust billowed around his huge body, and he was fuming white foam. He stared at me enraged, opened his mouth wide, and let loose a chilling roar. Wildly pounding the earth, his hooves prepared to trample me. Before I could even react, he halted, cocked his head down, and then threw it upward in a sweeping motion, jabbing his horn into my belly. I gasped. I was hurled upward and flew headlong over the bull's body, then crashed to the ground. As I lay there, he impatiently scraped the earth with his hooves, snorting through his nostrils, and prepared to attack again. Writhing in pain, I thought I was a dead man. Just then, a thin, neatly dressed elderly man wearing a Nehru hat appeared on the path. He shouted some words in the local language which induced the bull to lower its head. To my relief, the animal strode quietly away. Extending his hand, the strange man lifted me up. "Are you all right?" he asked. "That bull was too much angry." Relieved, I took inventory of my physical condition. To my amazement, there were no injuries, and my pain had vanished. As I took my first step, I cried out. A thorn had pricked deeply into my foot, causing me more discomfort than the horn of the bull. I reached down to extract the thorn, reflecting that perhaps this was Krishna's kindness, a token thorn to replace the bull's horn. "I'm fine," I replied. "Thank you for saving my life." "I did not save you, Baba," the old man smiled. "Krishna saved you. I was only his instrument." His voice wavered with emotion. "All Krishna wants in return from us is our love." He turned me around, examining me for wounds and sweeping the dirt from my clothes. "Where do you come from, and why are you here?" he asked. I explained my situation, and the old man, noting the position of the sun, announced, "I am late for a meeting. You may join me if you wish." Together we passed along the sandy pathways of the forest. He removed his hat from his neatly combed white hair and said, "I'm taking you to the home of a rare saint and scholar. He is unknown to the public, but the spiritually elevated souls of this area revere him. I believe in English you would call him a saint among saints." We came upon a flat rock that served as a bridge for crossing over an open sewage canal. Thick, black sewage bubbled and gurgled in this 3-foot-wide moat. Choking from the stench, I carefully crossed over it. Just then, a family of hogs dove into the moat and reveled about, slurping and gulping down the putrefied black nectar. Faces dripping with fecal matter, they snorted in joy. Minutes later, we were surrounded by a natural haven of greenery, aromatic flowers, buzzing bees, and trilling birds. After some distance, we spilled out into a courtyard with a small kutir, a hut for worship. "Please come," my guide said, pressing my hand into his. Inside, sitting on a wooden plank, was a sadhu. Both his head and face were clean-shaven, in what I now understood as an expression of detachment from selfish pursuits. A small tuft of hair remained at the back of his head to represent servitude to God. I was to learn that he was over 80 years old. With a soft smile, he placed his joined palms to his forehead and bowed his head. "We welcome you to our family." This was Vishaka Sharan Baba. An assembly of 5 elderly sages sat at his feet, eager to hear his every word. Vishaka Sharan Baba gazed towards me and spoke. My guide, who everyone called Panditji, translated his Hindi into English. He said, "If one begs for God's love like a starving man for food, the Lord will bestow that rarest treasure." He took my hand. "Please let me feed you." The satisfaction of his company drew me down that sandy pathway every afternoon at about 4 o'clock. Upon my arrival, Vishaka Sharan Baba, with his own hands, would offer me a straw mat to sit on and some flat homemade bread or rotis with gur, a sugarcane extract. This was the fare for the poorest people in Vrindavan. His followers exalted him and were eager to arrange his meals, but he refused. Longing to feel humble, even in his old age, he begged door to door. Whatever he received, usually coarse rotis and gur, it was his joy to share with me. Although over 4 times my age, a saint among saints, a recognized scholar, he treated me with a compassion that left me speechless. Vishaka Sharan Baba had first come to Vrindavan as a sadhu in 1918 and remained for the rest of his life. Little is known of his past, as he rarely discussed it. In the Himalayas, I had lived among holy men who practiced severe indifference to the world, and I witnessed varieties of supernatural powers. Vishaka Sharan Baba neither displayed such miracles nor tortured his body. He was just absorbed in loving service. When he spoke of Sri Radha's love and Lord Krishna's pastimes, he was like an innocent child, unaware that he had the authority of a spiritual king. In his shyness, he hid his ecstasies and served in an ordinary way. His presence drew an affection from my heart that I could not fully understand. On one occasion, I asked Vishaka Sharan Baba, "Please tell me whatever you feel I need to hear." Sitting on his wooden plank, he closed his eyes, and entering a trance, a stream of words so relevant to my concerns, questions, and longing to embrace Krishna flowed from his mouth, and I listened while Panditji closed his eyes and translated for me. Lord Krishna's body is purely spiritual. His form is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. The Vedic scriptures and the visions of millennia of saints all concur in describing his form in the spiritual world. Although his beauty is indescribable to the material senses, the scriptures give as close a description as is humanly comprehensible. He is the reservoir of all beauty. His complexion is bluish like a newly formed monsoon cloud, with the exception of his palms and soles that are like pink lotuses. His eyes, which see everywhere, are the shape of fully blossomed lotus petals. His nose is soft like the sesame flower, his lips reddish like the bimba fruit, and his teeth like rows of pearls. His cheeks and forehead possess the beauty of full moons. His ears, which hear everything, are decorated with bejeweled earrings shaped like sharks. His hair, like radiant black silk, cascades luxuriously around his moon-like face and is ornamented by a string of tiny flowers, jewels, and a peacock feather. His neck gently swirls like the conch shell, and his every limb is softer than fresh butter, yet he may act with the power of a thunderbolt. He is unlimited and supremely independent. Through his energies, all material and spiritual worlds are pervaded, and he expands to personally reside within the heart of every living being as our constant friend and witness. He oversees the material creation, sometimes as a strict father, but in the highest realm of the spiritual world, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. He shares his bliss with everyone through his playful pastimes, humorous words, and mischievous pranks. When he poses with 3 graceful bends and plays his flute, he mesmerizes our hearts with his all-enchanting love. In a state of bliss, Vishakasharan Baba went on as I listened, fascinated. And Sri Radha, he said, the Lord's feminine counterpart, has a complexion like molten gold. She is the supremely compassionate mother of all beings, and her beautiful attributes enchant even the mind of Krishna. But I feel unqualified to even begin to describe them. Her love is the all-pervading reality that charges the spiritual world with endless bliss. His enchanting description then shifted into an erudite analysis of these most personal forms of God, a perfect salve for my analytical Western mind. He said, one might think that such a description of God is anthropomorphic or trying to impose human-like qualities upon God. But to the contrary, it is humans who, in minute degree, have been blessed with qualities that originate in the Lord. As it is written in the Holy Bible, man is made in the image of God. His conception of the one God was so highly personal, not just in an allegoric or symbolic way, but as a spiritual truth far beyond our sensual or intellectual purview. The only way to access God for him was through sincere devotion. I found myself gradually gaining a deeper appreciation of these people's reasons for chanting God's names, serving others with such humility, and praying to the deity. One afternoon, I found Vishakasharan Baba and the sages gathered around an old wooden radio with an arched top, metal knobs, and a protruding antenna. It was probably made in the 1930s. As the crackling of static boomed out, my friend, who had saved me from the bull, translated the news for me. India and Pakistan are at war. His face clouded with grief. The cruel war is raging. Bombs are dropping, and thousands of troops are battling. No place is safe. The government has declared a blackout, cutting electricity to protect us from night bombings. His attention was drawn again to the crackling voice of the news. America is warning all American citizens to leave India at once. I now felt more like an Indian sadhu than an American, so it hardly registered that this might apply to me. Still, news of the war would certainly intensify the worry of my parents. To assure them of my safety, I composed a letter on December 7th, 1971, my 21st birthday. My family, the wars on earth are but a manifestation of the battles within man's mind. We enter into a battle zone the moment we forget the Lord. Today, there is war in Vietnam, in Israel, and now between India and Pakistan. As long as we are prisoners of our mind's passions, we are in each of these battlefields. But be assured that I am safe. Be kind, Richard. While the Vietnam War afflicted my colleagues across the globe in America, I now found myself in another battle zone. With the partition of India in 1947, a split with Pakistan had been created, and West Pakistan and East Pakistan were formed on opposite sides of India. On December 3, 1971, West Pakistani warplanes attacked Indian soil in retaliation for India aiding an East Pakistani party that supported autonomy from West Pakistan. Full-scale war began between India and West Pakistan. A bloody war ensued, with aggressive battles on the land, air, and sea that left thousands dead and many more injured. After 14 days, West Pakistan would surrender in defeat, and East Pakistan would become the independent nation, Bangladesh. While the war was still raging, Vishaka Sharan Baba and these old sages gathered around their radio and listened to the evening news broadcast. Tears of sympathy filled their eyes when they heard of the bloodshed. After switching off the radio, they immersed themselves in discussing the Lord and soon enough began bubbling over with joy. At the same time, they were both blissfully absorbed in a spiritual reality beyond birth and death, and also distressed by the human suffering surrounding them. Vishaka Sharan Baba and his followers were teaching me the virtue of balance. It was an art that required maturity and realization. Through them, I saw that to be sensitive to the troubles of the world and the plight of others on the material plane did not mean that one had to neglect the spiritual plane. On the contrary, I saw how loving God naturally awakened the qualities of an ideal human being, one with compassion for all.